Yeah. All right. All right. Well, welcome everyone to another live webinar for our BHLTH 420 Women's Global Health and Human Rights class. And tonight we are so lucky, and sorry for my weird face here in the sun, but I'm by a window. Tonight we're so lucky to have Kiera Hurley and Isabel Reyes-Paz here, both from the BASTA Coalition of Washington State, to talk with us tonight about the issue of sexual violence in agriculture, but also the advocacy efforts that BASTA and farm workers are involved with to actually prevent and to stop this. And it's a very much, until recently, been such a silent epidemic. And some of my research as well focuses on this issue. So while Kiera and Isabel will be facilitating tonight, I'm happy to also help with Q&A. And Isabel, if there's time at the end, I can show them a little bit about, show them some of the work that farm workers have helped to produce in relation to education materials. So I will go ahead and just, what we're going to do is start with a few words of introduction by Kiera and then also Isabel. And then we'll come back to me. I'll talk a little bit about how the night will flow, and then we'll turn it back over to Kiera. So Kiera, take it away.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Kiera. I'm a senior. I'm majoring in biology, which seems kind of weird that I'm presenting on this, but I'm super passionate about promoting community health, especially through psychology. I actually plan to become a psychiatrist, and I want to move back over to Yakima just because of the health issues over there. I have held an officer position in the Black Student Union on campus for 4 years. This is my fourth and final. And I've also worked on the Student Justice Committee for the BASTA Coalition of Washington for a little under a year. So that's kind of just all about me, and I'm excited to share my work and research with you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kiera. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight and all of your efforts too with BASTA. And Isabel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Isabel. I am currently acting as program coordinator for the BASTA Coalition, and I also have a full-time job at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance Northwest Hospital. I'm a patient care coordinator there. I've been working with the BASTA Coalition on and off since 2013, which is when I started studying public health at the University of Washington. And I've had various other positions since graduating. I finished my public health degree in 2016. My first job was also at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance as an administrative assistant. At the time, I thought I wanted to do health administration, but I ended up moving back towards public health. And then I also moved home to the Yakima Valley for 2 years, and I was an asthma educator with the Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic. And through that position, I was also able to work with children who were enrolled in a pediatric intervention study that was also in partnership through UW. Let's see what else. I'm really excited to continue working with the BASTA Coalition for the next 2 years, and I hope to connect what I'm doing with the coalition with my master's program, which I will be also starting a master's degree, again, in public health with the emphasis on social and behavioral sciences.
Wonderful. Thanks to you both. And I wanted to say, students, Isabel actually began her advocacy work and her research work with BASTA while she was an undergrad student. And to see you, Isabel, now actually helping to create this organization, not just that the BASTA Coalition will be a coalition, but an actual 501c3 in the near future, and that Isabel could be possibly the executive director, just shows you all that what you are doing here, and you're at the UW right now, you don't know how a project or some of the volunteer work that you're doing, how that's really going to impact your life later on and the communities around you. So both of you are just so inspiring. So grateful to have you here. To our audience, I just wanted to let you know that because we're recording this tonight, we probably won't start and stop with questions, but you're feel free to type those in the chat, or we're going to leave some time at the very end to have some open Q&A. Okay, so with that in mind, for anybody who's going to be decorating on their bandanas, please feel free to do that. Just a refresher, behind me on my profile photo, you'll see the title of the project, their service project for this class is the Bandana Project. And it was originally came from Southern Poverty Law Center and Monica Ramirez, who really started the project to bring awareness to the issue. Like I said, it wasn't until recently, really, that we started having these conversations, and the issue has been pushed to the forefront with documentaries, that one of which you'll be seeing in next week called Rape in the Fields. But the bandanas are symbolic, and they're also used in the fields. So as you know, well, you may not know, but farm workers, in addition to using bandanas for blocking the sun, women especially can use them out of protection against the catcalls and other horrible sexualization that happens in the fields. So the Bandana Project is the bandanas that you decorate can go toward donations to farm workers. And in this case, it'll go toward farm workers in Eastern Washington, especially those who have been working with us in BASTA, or your bandana will go to a display for the BASTA Coalition as we do outreach and advocacy work. Okay, and so we'll put some time at the end where if you are working on your bandana, you'll have an opportunity to show it, or you can upload a picture of it later to our Padlet site. So I'm going to turn the mic now over to Kiara. Kiara is going to provide an overview and talk about the issue.
Yep. Let me get to sharing my screen. Okie doke, and then let me start presenting it. Sorry, I feel like I have a million things out here. Okay. Whoop. So first, I would like to talk, make kind of like a group of agreement with you guys. So this presentation will be on sexual violence. For a lot of people, 1 in 3 women have been have been victims of sexual violence, and so we don't really know who's all in the audience. So by continuing to move forward with this presentation, I want everyone to know that if they do need to take breaks, they can do so, and also that we need to be respectful with our words and responsive with other people's words. So kind of just a quick little mention of that. And then next, I'd like to talk about, so what does the life of a woman farm worker look like? So we're in a very special time where we live in Washington and we get to see a lot of the agriculture around us. That being said, not a lot of people are from Washington. So if anyone's been to the eastern side, do they have any ideas about what kind of the farm worker work would look like? I heard that Isabel was from Yakima. A lot of the town is farm work, so what does that look like?
Yeah, so like I said, I am originally from the Yakima Valley. I'm actually from a small town called Wapato, which is maybe 20 minutes away from Yakima, which is the biggest city in the Yakima Valley. So it's very heavily agricultural based, like even around my house, there's fields everywhere, apples, pears, there's just a lot of agricultural fields everywhere. And so my family actually, some of my earliest memories are going to asparagus fields with my parents. And so they just leave me wandering around the fields while they were cutting asparagus. And it's very hard labor. And I've even experienced it as an adult. So when I'd go back home for summers, I'd work in warehouses, and that was my first like hard experience of understanding how difficult the work is. So the environment is, I feel like it can be, I guess it can leave women being vulnerable because, you know, a majority of the supervisors are men. They group the women into small circles or small areas, and there's not a lot of supervision aside from the men. And so typically the men are just in a position of power where they can essentially abuse women or take advantage of them, you know, so it's really a difficult environment to work in.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so kind of just start thinking about that a little bit for all of the people that did not answer or I didn't see anything in the chat. We're going to watch a quick little video giving kind of a background to a particular story, but in that you'll see a few different things. One moment.
Kiara, you might need to stop share and then share again just to get the view of the video.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okie doke.
There you go.
There.
Siempre hay hombres que molestan a las mujeres, siempre hay 2 o 3 en cada trabajo, no hay ningún trabajo donde tú no puedas ser molestada, porque a veces le dicen a la mujer, si tú no te dejas hacer esto, o si tú no andas conmigo, yo ya no te voy a dar trabajo. Cuando tú llegas y das una queja al policía, el policía lo primero que te pregunta, ¿tienes documento? Entonces eso no es el miedo.
Ustedes tienen que llegar y imitar el personaje, pero sin estar actuando. Y si no me sé el personaje que puso la demás, ahí está.
Sexual harassment isn't an individual violence. It's a violence that is done in community because there's always observers, there's always standbyers, there's always other victims that let this kind of thing continue to happen. And so the more people we educate, the more we can eliminate these kinds of problems. When Maricela came to our office, she quickly figured out that sexual harassment is protected by the system.
Ya salíamos del trabajo, ya me sentaba al otro, al que según quería andar conmigo, me lo sentaba aquí, para que me tuviera al otro manoseando, y el otro me decía, te voy a hacer masajes. Pero no quiero masajes, yo con ganas hasta de golpear, quítate, no me tengo que hacer masajes. Yo estoy aquí. Ya decía, pues déjate, me decía el otro, déjate que te haga masaje. Le digo que no quiero, yo no quiero que me haga masaje, no necesito. Y ahí está, ya que. Si me enojaba, ya no me va a ratear mañana. Yo pensaba, ya, me dejaba. Ahí está, masajeando. Ahí está. Ay, Dios mío, decía yo, bueno. Yo no le decía nada porque él era el que mandaba. Y si yo le decía al patrón, pues dije, no me va a creer a mí, yo sé que lo va a defender a ellos. Me vine y yo llorando. Ya aquí yo estaba sola, no había nadie. Me fui para allá, allá me senté. Me puse a llorar, pero con aquel sentimiento. Pero voy a hablar todo lo que me han hecho. Van a ver, y van a ver, Señor. Yo con mi corazón, pero un coraje y una rabia que tenía con ellos. Y yo, pero van a ver.
It's very hard. There has to be a really strong will and commitment from the person. And luckily, Maricela had that anger and that passion for wanting to address the issue.
¿Y por qué no se fue? Se hubiera ido, dijo el patrón. Ya empezó no sé, a enojarse y después nos corrió. Váyanse, dijo, váyanse. Entonces Leti ahí estaba. Leti le estaba diciendo, para que te des cuenta y para que sepas que lo que ellos están haciendo y lo que hacen y todo. Pues no, como diciendo que no le importaba. Yo le digo a Leti que después no dormía. Se me fue el sueño. Me traumé en ese rato que el Olillo se enojó. Yo siempre digo que yo he sido fuerte. Siempre. Nunca me dejo caer de los maltratos, de los acosos. Pero esta vez sí. Como que me quería tumbar eso. Ese trauma. Como decir, ay, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué me despierto? ¿Por qué a pensar y a pensar todo eso? No quiero pensar. Todo eso hay que sacarlo para que no se quede aquí adentro. Ya cuando vas otra vez con la flor a platicar con la persona, ya otra vez te está animando. Entonces como que otra vez tú subes y ya, poco a poco vas quitando tu trauma.
Right. So that that was a little glimpse at some of these women's lives and some of the difficulties that they face. I'm going to continue to share my PowerPoint. And if you need a moment to kind of reflect on everything, go ahead and take that. I know that this is really hard to watch and listen to. So if you need that moment, go ahead and take that. So after that video, we kind of get to see what the work environment is like for farm workers. Specifically in the Washington area, the women are placed in small groups in the middle of a field with little to no protection other than her supervisor that may or may not be armed. So if the supervisor happened to be the abuser, there really is no one out in the fields that will protect her. Additionally, you see this woman bending down to go pick up, I believe those are radishes, the radishes from the ground. And you see that they can be placed in physically vulnerable positions due to the nature of the work. I know that growing up, I lived next to hop fields and the women had to reach up to do a lot of the work. And whether it's reaching up or bending down, if a supervisor comes along and just does a quick graze, that leaves these women very vulnerable. And they're also in the hot sun, out in the pesticides. It's just not great for them. And men, both workers and supervisors, take advantage of that. And then, so how does this position of power come into play in a farm worker setting? So this is a huge issue. So there's a big culture of being subservient to men. So generally, a lot of women in the field feel like they shouldn't tell anyone, mainly because they don't want to make them look bad to other men because they'll always side with the abuser. Additionally, there's a lot of familial relationships in a farm worker setting. So a lot of times the brother, cousin, uncle, aunt, everyone will go out and work in the field together. And so by these women saying anything to their supervisor about the person, a lot of times retaliation will occur and their entire family will lose their jobs, or their family will be put in a position where they have to choose between supporting an institution that supports abusers versus supporting your family member. And a lot of times that's very heartbreaking for these women because their family can't necessarily make that commitment. Additionally, many times women are reliant on their boss for their immigration status. So they will come up to Yakima per se, and they'll give their supervisor all of their paperwork to be allowed to work here legally. And if their supervisor is a abuser, they can hold that over their head and not give them access to their money, not give them access to transportation, any of that. And then men in power are usually the perpetrators in these kinds of situations and tend to be protected by the company rather than having like due process for their actions. And then kind of to add a little bit more on that, from 2005 through 2012, 67 out of 92 sexual harassment cases reported to the Human Rights Commission were dismissed. That's a crazy amount and it's unacceptable. Failure to report sexual or domestic violence in Latinx communities are very low in general, just due to just different cultural and policing like untrustworthiness. And additionally, a lot of times immigrants will work these jobs and they're not being covered by certain sexual assault laws that are made in the United States. And because of this, companies will fail to investigate or file a report for them if they are immigrants over here. And then there's also very few consequences for the assaulter. Like I said before, a lot of times the company will side with the supervisor instead of the woman, and the woman will be left without a job, many times without a home because they do live on little bases in the fields, and in some cases without a family because of the choice between family and income. So possible sexual impacts of sexual violence on farm worker women, like when we saw in the video of Maricela's story, if anything great were to happen, a lot of times these women are left with large medical bills and no access to a doctor or a therapist. They have very little community or support legally in any of these issues. They additionally might be in a position where the attacker could have all of her paperwork and she wouldn't be able to go and talk to anyone. There's a huge amount of emotional stress and trauma due to all of the abuse that happens in the field. So that's just great. It's PTSD, anxiety, depression. In the video, we saw Maricela say that she just didn't want to get up. She was just tired. And a lot of these times, these women do feel that, and they don't know what to do with all of this. And that's just really hard on them. So then, in Rising Above the Violence, I have Isabel to talk a little bit about that. We have the Boston Coalition who's helping. And then additionally, a lot of times these women are seeking out each other in their own community so that they can band together in their with their background and having strength in that. So a lot of times if the women need help, they'll call other women from their workplace who have been through the same thing and go seek out help from them rather than help through the government or help or outside help. So if Isabel wanted to talk a little bit more about the BHLTH Coalition, that would be great.
Yeah, I will talk a little bit about it here, and then I also had some slides prepared for the end of the presentation. But the BHLTH Coalition has been doing a lot of work in order to eliminate sexual harassment and sexual violence from the workplace, really focusing on making the environment a healthy environment for workers. So like I said, I've been involved with the BHLTH Coalition since 2013, and I will talk a little bit more about everything that went on before it was turned into the BHLTH Coalition. But essentially, when I came on, it was a research study trying to look at the prevalence of sexual harassment among women in the Yakima Valley and what we could do to reduce and eliminate sexual harassment. So a lot of the things that we did when I first got involved was providing education for the women, listening to their stories and trying to get a sense of how big that problem was. And for example, one of the projects that I worked on was creating wallet cards that had information on what sexual harassment was and some resources to contact if the women were facing sexual harassment. And one of the big issues we found is that women feel, or like, I guess there's a lack of education among the community, and women feel like sexual harassment is just part of the job. It's something that you experience on the job, and a lot of times it's not known that sexual harassment is actually illegal, and regardless of immigration status, you know, there are laws that protect women against this, and they can report it regardless of immigration status. So one of the things that we did was the wallet cards, which were also informed by the women. So we, for example, did like a first draft of what we thought should be on the wallet cards. And then we went back and talked to the women and got their feedback as to whether or not the information we thought we wanted to put on there was helpful or not. And then drafted a final draft based on their feedback of what would be helpful to the community. And another project that we also worked on was creating a play that also helped educate the rest of the community as to what sexual harassment was and how big the problem was in the Yakima Valley. I do have a note from Jody to also talk about so what we can do as consumers to have our voices heard and to have companies address the issue. So a lot of times, I think companies aren't held accountable to their lack of reporting sexual harassment, or I guess being, what's the word I'm trying to use? I think
Accountable.
yes, accountable to their actions and making sure that their work environments really are healthy work environments for the workers. So I think some things as consumers that we can do is being aware of which companies are really perpetuating sexual harassment. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen in the news, but there are a couple companies in the Yakima Valley that are constantly in the news because they're really not protecting workers and they're not making the environment safe for their workers. So one thing that you could do is boycott that company, don't buy their products, you know, like really make it known that you know that it's an issue and find ways to support the workers in that sense and not support the company.
Yes, all great things. Additionally, you could also, speaking to your legislators is a very important aspect of getting laws passed. We live very close to Olympia, so we have the luxury of being able to hop over there if we need to. Additionally, by supporting organizations like BHLTH or an organization like the Northwest Justice Project and things like that, you are advocating for people and making sure that you're not consuming, accidentally consuming and supporting institutions that support violence like that. A lot of times the women aren't able to do this work for themselves because they are working so hard out in the field or trying to figure out how to support themselves with this, and are often left with little or no direction. So by making a lot of these organizations bigger and larger and promoting education for a lot of this, we're able to help them with that, and that's what we can do. Additionally, by making Bandana that we are making here will help with more social advocacy, which is very important as well, because while the community doesn't know about a lot of these things, the population also doesn't know in their consumerism. So by making that more predominant, that will help. There's really only 3 resources currently for these women. I just thought that I'd mention that. It's the Northwest Justice Project, the Sexual Assault Hotline in Yakima, and the Washington Human Rights Commission. That's very, very low for an entire state, and one of them was just a resource for Yakima. So the BHLTH Coalition is advocating for more laws to help these women. On that note, if we want to go ahead and go back to Isabel for her formal presentation on the BHLTH Coalition, that would be great.
I think Jody wants to share a few slides first, so I will go ahead and let Jody share her slides, and then I'll get started with my presentation.
Yeah, thank you all. I just wanted to, first of all, I think you're doing just a wonderful job. And Kara, thank you for playing that vignette at the very beginning. Oh, is my internet going? Okay, sorry about that. Extremely compelling and also just so representative of uh-oh, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I can't hear you.
Sure. Okay. Oh, goodness.
I think you're lagging a little bit.
Sorry.
It's weird because everybody else that speaks, I can hear them clearly, but for you, it sounds like your microphone is across the room.
Sorry about that, everyone. I got bumped out of Zoom. My worst nightmare. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry. Let's try this again. All right. What I wanted to share with everyone, first I was just complimenting Kara and Isabel for what they've already shared. But I wanted to bring out the fact that sexual harassment right now is not seen as a worksite safety hazard under the OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Association. Seems like that's ridiculous. So part of the advocacy effort is actually pushing on OSHA to see this as a worksite safety hazard. And so there have been some gains. One of the things to keep in mind with the Me Too movement is it left farm worker women really out of it until Monica Ramirez came into it. And our very own Dr. Victoria Breckfast has had co-authored an op-ed about this for the Seattle Times, saying, where is the Me Too movement for farm worker women? So we've slowly seen these issues be pushed to the front. And OSHA, we're starting to see some movement as it relates to mandatory training in fields like construction. But so far in the state of Washington, training is not required. Okay, so I just wanted to share a little bit, because this is also the work of BHLTH, is that training, and it speaks to sexual harassment overall. There's been some conflicting scholarly publications that talk about, well, is sexual harassment training even effective? And when you go back and you look at the literature, like I have, what you'll see is that they can't really possibly come to a good conclusion, because the studies are so different and the situations are different. Most of the studies are done in what we call the white collar sectors. Very few are done in sectors like agriculture. And the types of training that people receive can be anything from like a PowerPoint that you're supposed to watch on your own to listening to somebody talk about it for 5 minutes on the back of a truck. So there hasn't been a lot of rigor in the area of really tailored training or requiring training. But one thing that they have seen over time is that education does matter, right? We know that in a lot of different ways. Education can not only raise consciousness about the issues, but it talks about changing attitudes, and attitudes inform behavior. And then together, collectively, we can make changes at the policy level. So one of the things that we, the farm worker women, I should say, really help lead, as Isabel was talking about, is the creation of these tailored materials in Spanish. So BHLTH was actually one of the very, if not the first organization that has come out with a tailored curriculum that was it was written and it was really led by farm workers and farm worker women specifically. So now we have a video that Isabel mentioned. It was based on lived experiences of farm worker women who helped to write it. We've got, I'll show you really quickly. I'm gonna stop sharing and then show you the, I know that Isabel's gonna talk about BHLTH as an organization, but here are just some examples of when you go to the Pacific Northwest Agriculture Safety and Health Center from UW, you'll see a story, a little bit of background about BHLTH and some of the materials that were created. So these materials were created over several years. As Isabel said, it started back in 2013. So now we have videos in Spanish and English. We actually had stories from growers who have wanted to make change in the, in agriculture. We don't have a lot, I have to say. I wish we had more, but the allies that we do have been very intent on helping to create this cultural shift and are trying to do things differently. So if you have time and you're interested in someday maybe doing this type of work where you want to create educational materials for particular audiences and you want to work with community to do it, check out the BHLTH. You can just Google BHLTH and UW and this will come up and you can see everything from posters to the video itself you might be interested in watching. We created also a comic most recently so that, what women wanted was, I don't know if I'm sharing my screen. Am I sharing my screen? I don't know if I was, so then you didn't see this. But, this is the website I was talking about. I thought I was sharing it with you. But you can go to the BHLTH site on the Panache website and scroll through and look through all these resources. The comics was something that actually came out of a conversation with farm workers most recently about they wanted something portable. So if they didn't have the video, they wanted to be able to take something with them to start a conversation. So you can download the comic. The artwork was done by a wonderful artist named Myra Lara, who also is very passionate about this issue. So with that in mind, I wanted you to be able to see some of the work that the farm workers have been involved with and just some tangible things that you see BHLTH has also helped to create. So I'm going to turn the time now over to Isabel and she'll tell you a little bit more about the organization. And if you feel inclined to join us as part of the BHLTH Coalition, we would love to have you. Isabel, you've got it.
Thank you. Let me just pull up the slides.
I know it can be hard to see them when you do share screen. You could also just talk about it, Isabel, if you want. I've got some photos if you want to talk about even how the organization came to be.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm using not my laptop, so I'm not sure how to navigate a little bit of it. So I think I will just talk about the slides that I had prepared. So I wanted to talk about how the BASTA Coalition came to be, and first share its purpose and its mission. So the purpose of the coalition is to bring attention to the problem of sexual harassment in agriculture and to promote solutions that promote health and safety of the farm workers in Washington. And the mission is to eliminate farm worker sexual harassment through media attention, education, and public policy solutions. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of the BASTA Coalition and how it came to be. So like I said, I began working with the BASTA Coalition in 2013 when I started studying at UW. At the time, it was just a research study under the Pacific Northwest Agricultural Safety and Health Center, also known as PNASH, which is housed at the UW Seattle campus. And the study was on health and safety of women agricultural workers in the Yakima Valley. So like I mentioned a little bit before, this study was really trying to identify how prevalent sexual harassment was in the Yakima Valley and what we could do to help try to eliminate sexual harassment. And then from there, so that study lasted about 2 years, starting in 2013. In 2015, Dr. Breckwich Vasquez began efforts to try to fund a video training, because one of the things that we realized with that study is that, like Jody mentioned, there really isn't any mandated training on sexual harassment. And as someone who's worked in like warehouses and in fields, I can confirm that really what they do is they either give you a paper to sign, that a lot of times, workers don't even understand what is on that paper. And that's what they say was the training, when in reality, they didn't provide any training at all on what sexual harassment is and what to do if you're experiencing that. So in 2015, they began efforts to try to get some funding to create that, that worksite training video and curriculum. And then in 2015, also, I believe Jody was also one of the primary investigators on a second study, which was cultural and communication perspectives from the agricultural sector about sexual harassment prevention and training. And so with that study, there was a lot of focus groups that met with different audiences. For example, supervisors, men who worked in the agricultural sector, because the first study was just focusing on women. And so this second study also helped inform what was going to be covered in that training and curriculum, and what were important perspectives from the community to include in that. Then in 2017 is when the BASTA Coalition first came to be, and it was originally known as the Washington Coalition to Eliminate Farm Worker Sexual Harassment. And it is, I believe, a little over 20 different organizations that came together to try to address this issue and to make sure that eliminating sexual harassment from the workplace was at the forefront of their efforts. Some of the partners that are part of the coalition are, for example, Columbia Legal Services, Intercommunity Peace and Justice Center, Legal Voice, the Northwest Justice Project, Radio KDNA, among others. And also wanted to, and then in 2019 is actually when the toolkit, the training toolkit was released. So it's called the BASTA Preventing Sexual Harassment in Agriculture Toolkit. And like Jody mentioned, this training toolkit was really a big effort in part of the women agricultural workers. They really put a lot of hard work into that toolkit as well in order for it to be, like make a big difference in reducing and preventing sexual harassment. And what I think is so great about the BHLTH Coalition is that really it is bringing in the community that it's trying to help. The women were just such a big part of this project and really had a big voice in the creation of the training. And one of the women that I've been working with since 2013, Paula, she is just such a champion for agricultural workers, and she really wants to make a difference and really eliminate sexual harassment from the workplace. And it's been very rewarding to see all of the opportunities that she's had with working with Vicky, with Dr. Rekwich Vasquez since the beginning of the coalition. And then this year, 2021, is actually when the change in the name from Washington Coalition to Eliminate Farm Worker Sexual Harassment changed into the BHLTH Coalition of Washington. So that is the name we currently have. We also have a 2-year project that we're working on. And so this is where I want to talk a little bit about changes that we're trying to make at a policy level. So we recently got funding to pass a peer-to-peer training program, which will be from 2021 to 2023. And some of the main goals of this program are to develop a peer training curriculum that will work with farm worker women, 12 farm worker women, to train them as peer trainers, and to have them then go and train 100 farm workers using the curriculum that we develop with them. And also evaluate how effective that program is, and that model of having peers train other peers. And then the second goal of that project is to also support a statewide network of farm workers who are trained in the curriculum that really care about eliminating sexual harassment and are able to advocate for policy changes here in Washington. So this project is really important because really there isn't any project similar to this in the state of Washington, a project that is training peer farm workers to then go and train their peers. So using evaluation to see how effective this program is will also help us advocate for changes at a policy level to make sure that these sexual harassment trainings are mandated by all employers, and also trying to advocate for just overall making sure that maybe it is more effective for peers to train their coworkers rather than, for example, having human resources provide a training, which like Jody had mentioned, there really hasn't been a mandated training at the moment, and there's not really anything across the board that is effective. So we're hoping that with this program, we can really influence legislation and make sure that in the future, sexual harassment trainings are a mandated law for employers to provide. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is the Student Justice Committee. So Kiara has been part of the Student Justice Committee, and if she wants to talk a little bit about like her experience with the committee, but just wanted to point out some of the projects that the Student Justice Committee has done in the past. So for example, Kiara's Bandana project was something that she championed to have, and that I believe was done this past June. Some other students have worked on a BHLTH Coalition newsletter that will help inform the coalition and followers of the coalition of what we're doing. One of the other projects, for example, is one of the students created a nonprofit business plan for when we eventually move over to a nonprofit status. And then another student has also been working on creating a website for the BHLTH Coalition. And I will see if I can write this out in the chat so that you guys have that. Kiara, did you want to talk a little bit about your experience with the Student Justice Committee?
Yeah, my experience with the Student Justice Committee has been great. I kind of mentioned that I was a biology major at the beginning, so I didn't have a lot of background in a lot of this. But I think that as a part of working in the Student Justice Committee, you're able to find a place for your strengths and then a place to develop to make your weaknesses a bit stronger. So that's from like a personal viewpoint of the coalition. But as for the work I do, it's tremendous. Like it's almost indescribable. Like you're actively working towards bettering the lives of people. And I think that there's so much need for that. And it's just so beneficial to everything. So working as a part of this just is really helpful to everyone. And that's kind of enough for me.
And my involvement with the Student Justice Committee has been very recent, just with the new position that I have as program coordinator. When I first started with the BHLTH Coalition, we didn't have a Student Justice Committee, and I really appreciate all the work that the students are putting into the BHLTH Coalition and how that is really helping the farm worker women that are involved with the project as well. I wish we had that when I was in undergrad, but we didn't. I was involved in as much as I could with the project at the time. And I think it's great to see how much the coalition has grown to where now students are able to also support and advocate for the women as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, I just wanted to say too that if you've ever been interested in kind of understanding a little bit more about what a coalition is and what you do in a coalition, the BHLTH Coalition is such a wonderful one to join because you'll be so supported. We've got members from all different sectors. Rebecca Saldana, who represents Washington, is part of that. A former representative, Phyllis Kenny, is part of it. So you can actually talk to those who are, actively working on the state level. We've got, leaders from everywhere who have led. So it's good networking, and you're able to better understand how policies can be developed, how we can push for them collectively, how these types of decisions are made. So just by the work that BHLTH has done already, there was money that came through. So Dr. Breckler Vasquez and others pushed to have a budget allowance for a percentage of money that was coming to the states for COVID, but also for creating more safer workplaces, for part of that to be earmarked for farm workers and farm worker safety. So that all came from grassroots efforts. That did not come from labor and industry. It did not come from a representative themselves saying, this is what I want. It actually came from a group of people from all over saying, hey, we want this. So yeah, so I encourage you all, if you want to get involved, contact BHLTH. You can contact Isabel, myself, or Kiara, and we'll help you get connected. Good. Well, Kiara and Isabel, if we're at that part of the program where everyone, if you've got a question that we didn't cover and you want to ask a question, please feel free. You can take yourself off mute if you'd like, or you can pose a question in the chat. The other thing you can do is if you have been working on a bandana and you want to share it, you can upload it. You can share it on your screen, or you can upload it on our Padlet site. And I'll put that back in the chat because I think because I was bumped off, it disappeared. But feel free to take a minute if you have any questions. We are happy to answer them. Here's that Padlet site, by the way.
I have a question. Well, I have several questions, but the first one was, I was thinking about when I'm creating my bandana, I was wondering because I was going to write some words of empowerment, and I was wondering if it would be helpful to write them in Spanish, because I would assume that would be the best way that they could understand them. But then I got to thinking about, like, if I write those words of empowerment, and if a woman farm worker has those, somewhere on her body, if that almost wouldn't make her more of a target for these men that try to take advantage of them. And so I'm just wondering how to address that.
Yeah, Isabel and Kara, have you heard that from farm workers? I can see your point, Kelly. I really can. I personally have never heard that from them, but I think it could, it could be one of those situations. So never say never. I think what I would say, and I'm going to have Isabel and Kara weigh in, as I think that there is a feeling of when women receive these, that someone sees them, that someone knows, and that this is going on. So whether they decide to wear it or not, just to be able to receive that from someone, it's showing them that we know the situation, that we're fighting for them. Isabel and Kara, what would you say?
I definitely agree with that sentiment, having worked with some of the women, like I said, since 2013, I've known a couple of them. It's definitely, I would say, taken as more a sign of support, and like Jody said, of being heard and knowing that other people also recognize that this is a big issue that affects them. And I don't think it would make them more of a target in the workplace if they decided to wear it. I think a lot of them also feel like probably wearing it to work also lets other people know, like, I know this is an issue and I'm not gonna allow myself to experience this. I'm empowered enough to wear this to the workplace, and hopefully others will also show that same support.
Got it. In the beginning, when the woman was covering herself up with shirts and bandanas and sunglasses, was she doing that to protect herself from heat, or was she doing that to make herself look like a male, or what was the purpose of that?
So it can kind of be both. In a lot of my research and working in the fields, I find that the women wear both women and men wear protective gear because the sun is very hot out there and you're working all day. But I've also read that a lot of times women will wear baggier clothes in order to make themselves look more mannish or male-like to avoid attention, but they find that a lot of their efforts are unsuccessful because regardless of what they wear, they're still getting treated negatively and sexually assaulted. So both.
Yep. Some of the initial focus groups that I got to help with and listen to women and their experiences in the workplace and dealing with sexual harassment, that is something that they do in order to protect themselves, to hide their bodies. They do like layer up and wear baggier clothing to try to hide their bodies and to try to, I guess, not draw attention to themselves.
Good question, Kelly.
And if I were to treat mine sort of like a prayer cloth and write maybe a Bible verse on it, would that be offensive to any of them?
I wouldn't think so. I know some of them, like for example, Paula, who's very involved with the coalition, she's very religious. She has sometimes organized like events at churches and stuff. So I don't think it would be offensive.
Yeah, and I think Kelly too, like when we deliver the bandanas, we'll deliver them and the group can choose, they can choose the bandana that they maybe speaks to them. So yeah, I think
Got it.
Okay.
You mentioned that some of the companies are not protecting their workers, some companies more than others. And one of our things that we can do as consumers is to boycott that company. And so although that makes me feel good if I'm going into a store and I don't buy a certain product from a certain company, how is that, besides affecting their bottom line or their profit, how is that letting those crop owners know that the people that aren't buying their goods aren't buying it for that reason?
Yeah, Kelly, what I would say is you're absolutely right. It's not enough to just say, I'm not buying like X company's strawberries, right? We have to take it a step further. So every company has some sort of, consumer email that you can use. You can find out, do some scoping and find out who the CEO is, and you can actually write them. I used to work in regulatory affairs many years ago for a major nutrition company. And I learned a lot in those young years after my bachelor's degree that I still remember to this day, which is that the people calling in and talking about the product, it really does matter. They care. They care about their image. So, some consumers have, organized people to write chain letters and advocacy action alerts, contacting CEO, contacting the media, writing an op-ed, having a protest. I mean, these are all different forms of advocacy, but you're absolutely right. We're not going to do it just by simply deciding we're not going to buy something, because that's not enough to let them know that, hey, we know what's going on, So most of the time, and we see this a lot going on right now, most of the time, these companies want to be seen, right? That's why we get a lot of people during Pride now, right, that show these rainbows, but what are they really doing? Like they want it out there. So I think the consumer has to contact the company, like to make that count, and also to get involved with coalitions like this. And that's why they exist, because you want to do more. You want to do more. And as someone in the community who maybe you don't have a lot of time, being a part of a coalition, you can get things like email alerts. So someone's doing the work for you. All you're doing is filling in your name, and it's going directly to the people that it needs to go to, because they figured out who needs to get that message, or a legislator who's actually voting on a particular thing, right? Or maybe they don't know a lot about an issue. So this whole issue with funding for BASTA, that was because there was people involved saying, hey, we need to earmark this money. So thank you for asking that question. I think that's really important when we're talking about a boycott, what we mean.
Thank you all.
How about anybody else? If you're too shy, you can also type in the chat.
I have a question about the Student Justice Committee. So pretend I do join this committee, would I still be around like where I am right now, or would I go somewhere to be active in this part of place?
Yeah, so I believe the way it's structured is meeting weekly during the school year. For example, when I started sitting in on the Student Justice Committee meetings, they were every Thursdays, I believe, from 5 to 6. And so that's the time you really get to meet everyone else who's on the Student Justice Committee, what projects they're involved with, what projects you would be interested in becoming a part of. And some of the opportunities that you also get is, for example, going to the Yakima Valley and meeting some of the women. I know that's some of the things that some of the members of the Student Justice Committee have done, but it's definitely not a requirement. I mean, if you can't travel to the Yakima Valley, it's not required for you to do so. It's just if you're interested in doing that, that can be an opportunity for you.
Yeah, I also wanted to say, Monica, thank you for asking that. So there's a lot of ways you can be involved remotely. And BASTA is actually a partner with UW-Bothell. So if you all are thinking about your field work and you want to get involved with what it's like to be in supporting a coalition, you can do that. We will count that toward your field work. And of course, there'll be various assignments. Like students in the past have organized social media campaigns. They've done things like Isabel and Kara, where they've gone to present or hold special activities. So those are just wanting to let you know that not only can you get involved remotely, but if you haven't done field work and this interests you, it can also count toward your field work.
Adding on that, is there a requirement on how long I need to be? Because I would have a year left until I graduate. So can I do it for a year or maybe 2 quarters? Is there a set time?
Oh, I mean, in terms of being on the coalition or field work?
The Student Justice Committee.
I don't think there's a set time. I know some students do it to meet their fieldwork requirements, but other students just do it because they want to be involved and they want to make a difference and work on eliminating sexual harassment. So I think if you're just wanting to be involved as part of the Student Justice Committee, it's whatever effort you want to put into it and for however long you want to do that.
Yeah. And once you're not a student, you can still be part of the coalition because we have all kinds of committees. You know, the Student Justice Committee is one, but we have education, we've got communications, and we have a policy committee. So once you graduate, you know, and you can involve yourself in those committees, even if you are in the Student Justice Committee. Yeah. So you can stay on as long as you want.
And like Jody said at the beginning, I've been doing this for a really long time. It's something I'm really passionate about. Just, you know, growing up in the Yakima Valley and being a part of this community, it's really important work for me, and it's very rewarding to continue to do this, and I hope to continue to do it for a long time. So it really is the amount of time that you're interested in putting into it.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all.